The candles flickered, but not because of a breeze. It was the silence so heavy, so absolutely it made the flames tremble like they, too, were waiting for someone to speak. I stared at the table I had set with shaking hands just an hour ago. The fine china I hadn't used in years, the silverware polished to a shine, the cake with the words Happy 83rd, Mama, that I'd ordered myself. 6 chairs circled the table, just as they had every birthday for the past 4 decades. But tonight, only one chair was warm. Mine. I had cooked all-day roast chicken, mashed potatoes, glazed carrots, and apple pie just like my grandson liked it. My back ached from standing too long, but I didn't mind. They were worth it. Or at least, I believed they were. 7 p.m. came and went. I told myself they were just late. Traffic. A forgotten soccer game. Life. It happens. But by 8 o'clock, my fingers kept drifting to my phone. I checked the volume. Checked the battery. Maybe I'd missed a call. Nothing. I sat down at the head of the table. The clock ticked like a slow heartbeat. I cut a slice of cake, just to do something. The knife scraped the plate too loudly. Still nothing. The phone stayed silent. So did the front door. The thing about silence ice, it's not just quiet. It's cruel. It whispers the things people don't have the guts to say. You don't matter anymore. You're easy to forget. They have lives now. You're just an obligation they've grown tired of. I took a bite of cake. It tasted like chalk. I hadn't always been alone. For most of my life, this house had been filled with laughter. My son Mark used to run through the hallway with frosting on his nose, yelling that he'd beat his sister to the presents. My daughter-in-law Claire had once baked me a lemon tart, so perfect I cried. And my grandson, Ethan, used to sneak out of bed just to hug me one last time. But then people get older. Not just met him, too. Mark took a job 3 states away. Claire grew distant, polite in a way that felt sharp-edged. And Ethan, found college and forgot all about old women and their creaky houses. Last year they came late. The year before, they forgot until the next day. This year nothing. I stared across the table at the empty chairs and wondered when my presence had shifted from loved to inconvenient. I remembered the words my late husband once whispered when our daughter skipped a visit. Don't take it personally, Grace. People forget. But we remember. He always had a way of softening the blow. But he wasn't here to soften anything anymore. My hands curled in my lap. The cake stood untouched. The chicken had gone cold. I wanted to cry, but even tears felt tired now. Then came the soft knock at the door. I blinked. My heart gave a nervous flutter. Maybe, just maybe, I remembered. I pushed back my chair too fast, nearly stumbling as I made my way to the door. My fingers trembled on the handle as I opened it. It wasn't Mark, or Claire, or Ethan. It was Lilamy, neighbor from 2 houses down. A widow. Quiet. Gentle. Maybe 10 years younger than me. She held a single cupcake with a candle stuck crookedly in the center. I saw your lights on, she said softly. And I noticed all the cars were gone. Thought maybe I'd stop by. My lips parted, but no words came out. She offered a small smile. Happy birthday, Grace. That broke me. Not in a loud, weeping kind of way, but in the way a dam gives after holding back too long. My chest cracked open, my eyes stung, and I stepped aside to let her in. We sat at the table with my full cake, and she with her single cupcake, and for the first time that day, someone looked me in the eye. We didn't talk much. She didn't pry, just sat with me, quietly, as if saying, I see you. I haven't forgotten you. And that God helped Mimi it more than anything. Lila lit the candle and nodded. Make a wish. I stared at the flame. My fingers trembled. I didn't wish for Mark to call, or Claire, or Ethan. I wished that, someday, when Lila turned 83, someone would knock on her door too. The next morning, I found the cupcake wrapper in the sink. A sweet reminder that I hadn't just imagined it, someone had been there. That my birthday had not been entirely invisible. But once the sun rose, the silence came back, as if it had only stepped out for a breath. I shuffled to the living room and stared at my phone. Nothing. Not even a belated text. I tried not to let it sting, but when you've raised a child from cradle to college, you hope for at least a sentence on your birthday. I didn't want pity. I wanted presence. I wanted to be remembered. The truth is, growing old feels like becoming a ghost before you're dead. People still see you, technically, but they stop looking. They speak around you, past you, through you, and then, one day, they stop speaking altogether. By noon, I was dusting the picture frames in the hallway, me fingers tracing faces that had long since moved on. Mark in his graduation cap. Ethan at his first birthday. Claire, looking like she actually liked me once. The doorbell rang. I turned, startled. Visitors 2 days in a row. Unheard of. When I opened the door, there stood a teenager in a hoodie, holding a clipboard. Mrs. Ellison? Yes. I'm fundraising for the school orchestra, he said, voice bored. Would you like to donate? I blinked, caught off guard. Then I smiled. What instrument do you play? He shrugged. Violin. Well, sometimes. I went to the kitchen, fetched a $10 bill, and placed it in his outstretched hand. Thanks, he muttered, turning to go. Wait, I said before I realized why. Do you like apple pie? He looked at me, uncertain. I guess. I pointed toward the table. I baked one yesterday. Too much for me alone. Want a slice? He hesitated, then shrugged again. Sure. And just like that, a stranger sat at my table, eating the pie I had made for a family that never came. His name was Jordan. He lived a few blocks away. Parents divorced. Mom worked nights. He hated the violin, but liked basketball. He didn't talk much, but he didn't need to. His presence filled the space where loneliness used to settle like dust. When he finished his slice, he looked up. Thanks, Mrs. Ellison. That was better than the store stuff. You can call me Grace, I said, smiling. Okay, Grace. He stood, stuffed his hands in his pockets, and gave me a shy grin. Happy late birthday. I laughed. Thank you, Jordan. He waved and left. The front door clicked shut, and for the second time in 2 days, I realized something had shifted. Something small, but real. Later that week, Lila stopped by again, this time with a bag of oranges and an old deck of cards. Gin rummy, she offered. I hadn't played in years, but my fingers remembered. We played 2 rounds, both of which she won. She had the sharp kind of wit that slices without hurting. Every joke she cracked made the house feel less hollow. You know, she said, shuffling the cards. I think we old girls need to stick together. Do we? I asked with a smile. She leaned forward, eyes glinting. Yes, because nobody else remembers how valuable we are. That night, I thought a lot about that sentence. I used to be the center of everything. The one who remembered birthdays, stitched Halloween costumes, cooked Thanksgiving dinners, and wrote handwritten cards on Christmas Eve. But now, I had become background. Still useful, but not essential. Not anymore. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept looking at my phone. At the contact list. Mark, Claire, Ethan, all just a tap away. I could call, say hello, ask if they were busy on my birthday, pretend it didn't hurt, make it easier for them to forget next year too. But I didn't. Instead, I deleted the reminder I'd set for Ethan's graduation. The days passed. The dishes were finally washed. The leftover cake went stale. But something unexpected began to grow in the quiet. Routine. Not the kind born of emptiness, but of purpose. Jordan stopped by again, 2 days later, this time without a clipboard. He knocked shyly, hands in his hoodie pocket. Hey, he mumbled. I kind of forgot my mom's birthday. Do you think I could, bake something here? I don't really know how. So I taught him. The kitchen came alive again, flour on our hands, laughter bouncing off the tiles. When he left with a proud grin and a slightly lopsided cake, I felt something warm and unfamiliar. Not sadness, not regret, satisfaction. The next morning, Lila brought over her knitting. I showed her how I used to make baby booties. She told me about her husband's awful jokes. We drank tea. Time passed like it had meaning again. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. It was Mark. I opened the door, stunned. His arms were full of grocery bags and flowers. Claire stood behind him, awkward, holding a wrapped gift. Ethan had earbuds in, texting as he walked up the porch. Mom, Mark said breathlessly. I am so sorry. We forgot. It was just it's been a madhouse lately. I blinked at him. My heart raced. Claire stepped forward. We felt awful, Grace. Truly. We brought dinner, your favorites. Ethan finally looked up. Hey, Grandma. I opened the door wider, but I didn't smile. Inside, the table had already been set. Not for a birthday, but for dinner with Lila. Mark walked in first, looking around. You've been busy. Yes, I said simply. Claire set the bags down. We thought we'd make it up to you tonight. I nodded. I appreciate it. But I already have company. They looked confused. Just then, Lila appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. Oh, Claire said, blinking. You have friends over. I do. Mark's voice was cautious. Mom, we're sorry. Truly. I looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time, I saw the boy who used to bring me daisies from the park, who'd cried when he lost his first tooth. And now, the man before me looked tired, rushed, like someone who only remembered people when they made noise. I know, I said quietly. He took a deep breath. Can we join you? I paused, then nodded. But I didn't rush to make room. I didn't jump to fix them a plate. I let them settle into the rhythm I had found slow, gentle, intentional. Dinner was quiet at first. Then stories surfaced. Jokes slipped out. Laughter loosened things. Ethan asked Jordan if he played video games. Jordan challenged him to a match. Claire complimented Lila's earrings. Lila offered to teach her to knit. And me? I sat back, watched them all, and understood something I hadn't before. People forget, yes, but sometimes they come back. Not always on time. Not always perfectly, but sometimes. And the woman who had set a birthday table for 6, then sat alone, she wasn't quite so alone anymore. After dinner, Mark offered to help with the dishes. I told him no. Not because I didn't want his help, but because I wanted him to stay. Not clean, not rush, just stay. He looked relieved, oddly. Maybe even grateful. Claire leaned against the wall, watching Ethan and Jordan compare phones on the couch. He talks more here than he does at home, she whispered. Maybe he just needed a place to feel unjudged, I replied. She looked at me for a long second, her face softening in a way I hadn't seen in years. I'm sorry too, Grace. For drifting. For not noticing. I didn't say it's okay, because it hadn't been. Instead, I said, thank you. And I meant it. They left around 9:30 p.m., the air filled with those awkward but necessary goodbye hugs, the ones that say, we'll do better. We'll try. After the door closed behind them, Lila helped me pack up the rest of the pie. You could have thrown them out, she said plainly. You didn't know them anything. I know, I replied, placing the pie in the fridge. But I wasn't doing it for them. She raised an eyebrow. I was doing it for me, I continued, to see if kindness could still grow in old soil. She laughed. Well, consider it sprouting. We sat for a few more minutes in the quiet of the kitchen, our tea cooling, our hearts warmer than they had been in months. Outside, a breeze rustled the trees. The night didn't feel so empty. Over the next few weeks, the rhythm continued. Jordan came by almost every other day, sometimes just to talk, sometimes for food, sometimes for no reason at all. He asked me about my life, me real life, not just the old lady stories young people usually tolerate. He wanted to know about how I met my husband, what it felt like the first time I held Mark in my arms, why I kept so many old photos. You're like a museum, he said one day, looking around at the walls of framed memories. Am I dusty and forgotten? I teased. No, he grinned. You're alive. I hadn't realized how much I needed someone to say that. Lila and I started a little ritual too. Every Sunday evening, we'd make a new recipe together. Some weeks it was terrible. One time the lasagna came out like a rubber boot. Another week, we accidentally used salt instead of sugar and ruined an entire batch of cookies. But we laughed, and it healed something. Then, one Thursday, something strange happened. I got a letter. Not a bill, not a flyer. A real letter. The envelope was cream-colored, the handwriting neat but unfamiliar. I opened it carefully, and inside was a short note. Dear Grace, you don't know me, but I'm Ethan's girlfriend. My name is May. He told me what happened on your birthday, and how much it hurt you. He doesn't say it outright, but I think it's been eating at him. He talks about you a lot. Says you taught him to tie his shoes, that you used to sneak him gum when his mom wasn't looking. Says you made the best grilled cheese in the world. He's just not good at fixing things. But he cares. A lot. Anyway, I just wanted to say you matter. To him. To me, now too. And I hope next year, I get to sit at that birthday table with you. Sincerely, May. I held the letter in my hands like it was something fragile and alive. Then I folded it, pressed it to my chest, and cried. Not from pain, but from something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hope. By the time fall came around, the birthday was long gone, but the changes it brought stayed rooted. Mark called every Sunday now. Not always long calls, sometimes just 10 minutes. But they were real. Claire invited me to her book club. It was mostly younger women who talked too fast and used words I had to Google later. But they listened when I spoke, asked questions, laughed when I told them how I once flirted with a butcher for the last rack of lamb before Easter in 1979. Ethan visited too. Not often, but often enough. And when he came, He didn't sit with his phone. He looked me in the eyes. He asked about my stories. And one day, he even brought May. She was lovely, polite, warm, and funny. She held my hand longer than necessary and said, "It's so nice to finally meet you." I whispered, "Thank you for your letter." She smiled, knowingly. One night in late October, as I tucked myself into bed, I thought about the first day I sat at that birthday table alone, forgotten. And I realized it had been a turning point. A heartbreak, yes, but also a doorway. Because in the space where silence had once ruled, people had returned. Not all, not perfectly, but enough. And in the cracks they left behind, new light had gotten in. Lila, Jordan, even May. That night, before I turned off the lamp, I whispered a quiet promise to myself. Next year, I'll set the table again. Not because I expect them to come, but because I believe they might. And because, even if they don't, I'm not alone anymore. Winter came early that year. The cold crept into the corners of the house before the calendar said it should. I'd always dreaded winter not for the snow, but for what it reminded me of. Stillness, absence, a world gone quiet. But this winter felt different. Lila knitted me a thick shawl burgundy, my favorite color, and insisted I wear it, even when no one's looking. Especially when no one's looking, she corrected, eyes twinkling. Jordan brought me a thermos of hot cocoa before school one morning, dropping it off like it was a drug deal, mumbling something about too much sugar, but it's cold out, so whatever. Even Ethan sent a message. First snow. Wish I was there to see it from your kitchen window like we used to. Miss you, Grandma. I stood by the window after reading that, watching the snowflakes fall slowly onto the empty street, and felt something close to peace. Until the phone rang. It was the hospital. My heart stuttered. Lila had slipped on her porch steps and fractured her hip. They said she was stable, but in pain. She had no children, no siblings. I was listed as her emergency contact. Without even changing out of my slippers, I grabbed my coat and rushed to the hospital. The room smelled like disinfectant and fear. She looked so small in that bed, her face pale, her hands twitching slightly as if trying to hold on to something unseen. I sat beside her, held her hand. Her eyes fluttered open, barely. "They're giving me the good drugs," she whispered, a faint smile on her lips. "Feels like floating." "You always were dramatic," I said, squeezing her hand gently. Her smile faded. "I hate hospitals. I know. They make you feel replaceable. No one could ever replace you, Lila." A silence settled between us. Not heavy this time. Gentle. Then she said something I didn't expect. "If I don't make it through this, Grace, take my house." "What?" "My will. It's written. You're in it." "Lila, don't argue. I don't have many people left. You're it." I sat back, stunned. She coughed lightly, wincing from the pain. "I don't want to disappear. If someone lives in my space, remembers my teacups, yells at my creaky stairs, then I'm not really gone, am I?" "You're not going anywhere," I said. "Not yet." She closed her eyes, murmuring, "I hope not. There's still lasagna in your freezer I haven't ruined." Lila survived the surgery. She was crankier than ever during rehab, threatening to stab the nurse with her knitting needle. I visited every day, bringing magazines, cookies, and stories Jordan insisted I pass along. One afternoon, she was strong enough to sit up. She turned to me and said, "You should start hosting again." "Hosting what?" "People. Life. That house of yours it used to echo. Now it hums. Let it sing." I didn't answer right away. That night, I looked around my home, really looked. The empty walls were now filled with new pictures. Jordan holding a crooked pie, Lila scowling over burnt cookies, Ethan grinning beside a dog he found at the park. These weren't just memories. They were proof. Proof that time didn't stop after heartbreak. It just changed tempo. So I sent out invites. Handwritten. Not digital. Not texts. I sent one to Jordan's mom, even though we'd never spoken much. One to May. One to the neighbors with the loud twins I used to complain about. And yes, one to Mark and Claire, too. Christmas Eve. Dinner. 6 p.m. Come hungry. Come real. I waited. No one responded for days. Then, on December 22nd, my mailbox overflowed. Little envelopes. Handwritten notes. RSVPs, gratitude. Even one that simply said, "I've never been invited anywhere before. I'll bring dessert." Christmas Eve arrived like magic. Snow blanketed the world outside. Inside, my house glowed with warmth, candles flickering, smells of rosemary chicken, and cinnamon wafting from the oven. Jordan showed up first, in a wrinkled shirt and with a nervous smile. He brought store-bought brownies and said, "Don't judge me." Lila arrived next, limping but proud, held steady by a younger nurse who clearly adored her. She brought a deck of cards and a sharp tongue. Then came neighbors. Some I barely knew. Others I had silently judged for years. They walked in with casseroles, wine, awkward laughter. May came alone. "Ethan had the flu," she said, but sent a video greeting holding a tissue and a thumbs up. Claire and Mark were late, but not too late. Mark wore the scarf I knitted him 3 birthdays ago. Claire brought sweet potato pie and no apology, just a soft look that said everything. The table was full. Full of clinking glasses, stories shared, hands brushed by accident and left longer than needed. Full of mismatched chairs and laughter that rose to the ceiling like song. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the host. I felt like part of the party. Halfway through dinner, I noticed a small envelope tucked under my plate. It was Ethan's handwriting. "Dear Grandma, Mom told me about the dinner. I wish I could be there. But I want you to know, I remember everything. The smell of your house in winter. How you always saved the last cookie for me. How you hummed while folding laundry. How you always knew when I was lying. I remember it all. And I love you for every second of it. P.S. Next year, I'm bringing my girlfriend. She makes terrible pie. You'll love her. Love. Ethan." I didn't cry. Not then. I read it again after everyone left, in the quiet, when the candles had melted low and the dishes waited patiently in the sink. That night, I lit a candle on the windowsill. One small flame against the dark. Not for grief. Not for loneliness. But for memory. For love. For the future. Because I had learned something that year. Loneliness doesn't vanish in one grand gesture. It unravels slowly, stitch by stitch, undone by kindness, by effort, by courage to keep the door open even after it's been closed too many times. And real love doesn't always arrive on time. But if you leave the table set long enough, sometimes it comes home. January passed with a kind of quiet that didn't feel empty. My calendar, once filled only with doctor appointments and utility bills, now had handwritten notes in the margins. Lila, tea at 2. Jordan, basketball tryouts. May's birthday, bake lemon bars. One Sunday morning, I opened my front door and found a small potted plant sitting on the porch. No note, just a sticky tag on the side that read, "You're still blooming." I didn't know who left it, but it didn't matter, because whoever did knew me. That spring, Ethan came to visit. In person this time. He was taller, thinner, his voice deeper, but when he hugged me, it was exactly the same. "Grandma," he said, arms wrapped tight around me, "I've missed this smell." Lavender and old wood. I teased. He grinned. "No, you. Just you." May came with him. She held my hand like we were old friends. Brought a photo album she'd made of Ethan's childhood pictures, captioned with his snarky little notes. I laughed so hard at one of them I nearly choked on a strawberry. We sat outside that afternoon, watching the breeze sway through the trees, sipping lemonade and pretending time hadn't stolen years from us. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" Ethan asked me suddenly. When we stopped showing up, when the calls got fewer. I took a moment. "I was afraid," I said, "that if I had to ask to be remembered it wouldn't mean anything." He nodded, eyes low, then said, "You don't have to ask anymore." Summer was a blur of little joys. Jordan graduated high school. I watched from the back row, clapping louder than anyone. He wore the tie I helped him pick and cried when I gave him a pen with his name engraved on it. Lila walked without a cane by July. She still yelled at squirrels from her porch, but now did it with the posture of a queen. Mark and Claire came to dinner once a week. Sometimes we fought. Sometimes we sat in silence. But we were there, and that counted for more than any perfect conversation. And Ethan? He started calling me every Friday. Like clockwork. Sometimes with May. Sometimes alone. But always with something new to say. On August 14th, Themy's 84th birthday, I woke up early. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the cupboards. And I did set the table. Again. 6 chairs. Same plates. Same silverware. Same hopeful flutter in my chest. But this time, I wasn't waiting in fear. This time, I was preparing in joy. At 4 p.m., the first knock came. Jordan, now in college, holding a tray of cookies he definitely didn't bake. Then Lila, walking tall, with a birthday card that read, "Older, but never invisible." Then May and Ethan, this time with a ridiculous balloon that said, "Queen for a day," and a lemon tart that actually tasted better than Claire's. Then Mark and Claire, arm in arm, holding flowers and a photo book they'd made with pictures of every past birthday I thought they'd forgotten. The house filled. Chairs were squeezed together. Laughter spilled through the windows. Even the nosy neighbors peeked in and waved. And me? I sat at the head of the table, the place I'd once sat alone. But not anymore. Late that night, after everyone had gone, I walked through the quiet house. I didn't feel haunted. I felt held. I looked around and saw not just furniture and memories, but people who had returned. People I'd met in the most unexpected moments. People who weren't related to me, but became mine. Love had come back. But more than that, it had grown. And in the middle of it all was a table. The same table I'd once sat in silence. Now marked with crumbs and candle wax and laughter, scratched slightly from elbows and forks in joy. A table that waited and was rewarded. I sat down at it one last time that night. Lit a single candle. Not for the cake. Not for the photo. Just to remember. I closed my eyes and whispered something I hadn't dared to before. I am still here. And I am not forgotten. Epilogue. 1 year later, after my 85th birthday, Jordan asked if he could record me. For a school project, he said. But really just because I don't want to forget. We sat in the living room. He asked me questions. What's your biggest regret? Thinking I had to wait to be remembered. What's your proudest moment? Learning I didn't. What would you tell someone who feels invisible? I looked straight into the camera and said, set the table anyway. Even if no one calls. Even if no one texts. Even if you think no one will come. Because someone will. Someone always does. And if they don't, someone new might. But either way, you matter. He cried when he played it back. And so did I.